Revealed. The haunted church where 100 souls were cursed, the sinister secret lurking inside. In the heart of the pristine Maplewood, a church stood formidable against the blue sky, its steeple piercing the sun. But whispers clung to it like cobwebs. They say it's haunted, the townsfolk would say in hushed tones. A fire took 100 souls. Cursed souls. Rachel, a single mother, felt the chill ripple down her spine as she pushed her 2 children past the church on the way home, their laughter a sharp contrast to the heavy air surrounding the building. Months had passed since her husband vanished without a trace. The sparkle of Maplewood faded into a suffocating weight. The wealthy lawns and manicured hedges felt like a cage. And now, the only connection she could muster with humanity was a weekly support group at that cursed church. As she stepped inside one evening, an uneasy jolt of fear tightened around her heart. The stained glass windows flickered in the dying light, casting eerie shapes that seemed to warp and twist. Inside the church, candles flickered erratically, casting long, ghostly shadows that danced along with the sporadic whispers of those lost, tormented souls. Rachel felt a presence beyond the members of the group. It was as if something extra lurked beneath the surface, just waiting to pounce. "You'll feel better if you share," the new pastor, Mark, encouraged, his eyes darting nervously. But his words only amplified the oppressive atmosphere, trapping her in a web of unease. As the days turned to weeks, Rachel began to notice odd things. Flickering lights in her home, shadows that seemed to whisper her name. And there were her kids, drawing cryptic phrases like "they're watching" and "help us" on the sidewalk, their innocent giggles replaced with an unsettling air. The whispers of the church seeped into her home, suffocating her thoughts. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The ghosts of Maplewood whispered stories of betrayal and deceit. One Sunday, after hearing rumors of how her husband was entangled with the town's elite, Rachel's heart pounded. She was piecing together a puzzle wrapped in shadows, a cover-up lurking beneath this polished facade. Could the very people who painted smiles on their faces be the ones who held the secrets to her husband's disappearance? One cold evening, terror gripped her home like a vice. As she sat on the couch, a heavy silence fell. The air thickened. The very walls seemed to pulsate with energy. Shadows flickered in the corners of her eye, and when she turned to look, nothing. Just the dark. Her heart raced as she wondered if the curses of the church were after her now, binding her to the same darkness that claimed her husband. Finally, she knew she had to confront the truth. Because those whispered secrets of betrayal she couldn't fathom were tying her family into a dark history. Standing before the church one night, illumination dimmed by uncertainty, the air suddenly thickened. The doors of the church slammed shut behind her with a ghostly force, plunging her into complete darkness. She fumbled for her phone, breath shallow and panicked. But in that suffocating silence, she was no longer alone. Whispers grew louder, echoing her name as shadows closed in. Where were they leading her? And more importantly, could she survive long enough to unravel the threads of her husband's fate before being swallowed by the very darkness she fled? The darkness enveloped Rachel like a thick fog, suffocating and cold. She clutched her phone, its screen casting a weak glow, battling against the shadows that danced and twisted around her. The whispers crescendoed, a cacophony of anguished voices. "Help us, find us," they echoed, a melody of despair chilling her bones. She staggered forward, the cool stone beneath her feet unsettlingly solid while the air rippled with an unseen force. Each step sent jolts of fear coursing through her. The flicker of candles somewhere deep within the church cast bizarre shapes on the walls, and Rachel realized they were not just shapes, but faces twisted in agony, mouths frozen in silent screams. "Is anyone there?" Her voice trembled, breaking through the oppressive quiet. The sheer terror of the moment drew a visceral reaction. Her heart hammered in her chest, and she could feel the weight of 100 unseen eyes boring into her skin. The whispers morphed, coalescing into a laughter that made her skin crawl. a mocking, taunting sound that clawed at her sanity. Rachel, a ghostly voice came from the depth of the dark, too intimate, too familiar. It was a cold reminder of her husband, his absence an unbearable void. Find me images flooded her mind, happy moments, the warmth of his arms around her, their shared laughter. And then dark clouds rolled in, memories split by the facelessness of his disappearance, swallowed by secrets and lies. No, she yelled into the darkness, anger rising to combat her fear. You're not real. Yet the laughter continued, wrapping around her, taunting her doubts as she fought to assert control. The shadows swirled closer, and she instinctively backed away, retreating but never knowing the path. The flickering light from her phone cast a stark contrast against the enveloping dark, illuminating fragments of the church pews stacked chaotically, a broken chandelier, remnants of time lost. But then, through the shadows, she saw it. An altar, slick and dark, heavy with an unholy presence. Candles were positioned reverently around it. The wax dripped like icy tears down the hardened surface. The air thickened, pressing down upon her as if the church itself was breathing. Find the truth, the voice whispered again, echoing from the altar, and with it came the sensation of icy fingers tracing down her spine. Rachel's breath hitched as she felt compelled, drawn toward it. The ethereal pull nearly irresistible as she hesitated, her heart racing. The air burst with sounds of chaos, an explosion of whispers and cries clawing at her consciousness. It was like she was caught in the eye of a storm, and in the center stood the altar, the source of everything wrong, the key to the vanished and the cursed. Trust the light, came a softer whisper, weaving through the chaos. Desperation sparked in her as she moved forward, fingers brushing against the cool surface of the altar. The overwhelming scent of burnt wax captured her senses, but the urge to uncover what lay beneath that darkness outweighed her fear. Suddenly, the whispers ceased. A deafening silence blanketed the room. The echoes of another time hung heavy in the air, and Rachel's heart thudded painfully against her ribcage. She turned toward the dark space behind her, sensing something stirring there, a presence she could not see, but felt creeping closer. What about the church had claimed her husband? What dark truth awaited her if she touched the altar? As dread coiled around her thoughts, a voice suddenly erupted, sharp and urgent. It will take you to. Her breath caught in her throat. What did it mean? Rachel closed her eyes tight, bracing for what lay ahead, unsure if the truth would save her or drag her deeper into a horrifying abyss. As she reached out one trembling hand to the altar, the world around her felt like it was unraveling. In that critical moment, her phone flickered out, plunging her into total darkness once more. Would the secrets of this cursed place claim another soul? Or would she unearth the truth before it was too late? A cold sweat broke across Rachel's brow as she stood in the suffocating darkness, her pulse a deafening drum in her ears. The shadows pressed in, thick and tangible, wrapping around her like chains. She blinked, desperately wishing for light, for something, anything that could dispel the overwhelming dread suffusing the air. Don't touch it, the warning echoed in her mind. But the allure of the altar was like a siren's call. Rachel could almost feel the whispers rising again, curling around her like smoke, pulling her closer. She barely breathed, her instincts screaming to run, to escape whatever darkness clutched at her. But still, she could not move away. With a trembling hand, she fumbled in her pocket for a lighter she kept just in case. As she flicked it on, a tiny flame sprung to life, casting flickering shadows against the walls. The faces of the damned writhed and distorted, their frozen screams even more agonizing under the glow. "Help us! Find us!" they cried out, but she had no idea how. Each crackle of the flame sent her heart racing. Every shadow seemed poised to devour her alive. The altar shimmered now, casting a faint reflection of her face back at her, a ghost of who she once was. Dark, hollow eyes stared back, and she felt a sharp pang of sorrow. Rachel, that mocking voice rose again from the depths. "Find me," shuddering. She turned back to face the altar, the small flame illuminating a grotesque scene. In the center lay a dagger, its blade stained with something dark and viscous, an offering perhaps? A blood sacrifice? Panic roared within her, but a strange sense of purpose anchored her feet to the stone. She needed answers. As she approached, the darkness swirled, and she could almost feel the cold tendrils slithering around her ankles. "This place, what happened here?" she whispered, her voice barely breaking the oppressive silence. Each word seemed to awaken something deep within the church, igniting a storm of whispers that collided in chaotic frenzy. A shriek pierced through the cacophony, sharp as glass shattering. It reverberated through the timber beams, bouncing off the walls as she clamped her hands over her ears. "Please, stop," she cried out, her voice swallowed by the din. But the voices only grew louder, more frantic, each desperate plea ricocheting off her mind. And then nothing. A sharp snap, and the whispers faded as abruptly as they had risen. An oppressive stillness returned, thick with an unspeakable tension. Rachel sensed she was not alone. The presence behind her loomed, close enough that she could feel its icy breath skimming over her skin. She turned slowly, lighter still flickering in her hand, illuminating nothing but air except for a pair of glowing eyes that pierced the darkness. Rachel's breath quickened as the figure took shape, revealing a gaunt face, skin drawn tight over bone, lips curled into a grim smile. "You came looking for truth," it hissed, a serpent's whisper slithering into her ears. "But truth may only lead you to terror." "No, get back," she shouted, the fragile flame threatening to extinguish with her trembling hand. The figure stepped closer, and the room seemed to shift. The altar pulsed with a sickening heartbeat, the shadows swirling faster around them, blurring reality. "What are you?" Rachel stammered, heart racing with dread. And then, a chilling grin spread across the creature's face, revealing a mouth full of jagged, rotting teeth. "I am what you seek, what you will become." With those words, Rachel felt something dark and inexplicable wash over her, an icy wave of recognition that threatened to swallow her whole. She had come to save her husband, but now, as she glanced back toward the altar, the truth loomed like a cursed promise, one she might not be able to escape. The flame flickered once more, and for a moment, she saw shadows changing shape, 1,000 eyes watching and waiting. But were they hers? Then, with a sudden gust, the flame extinguished, and Rachel was swallowed by darkness yet again. Was she meant to join them? Or was there still a way out? Rachel stood paralyzed, engulfed in deep, suffocating darkness. The air felt like a brick wall pressing against her, heavy and cold. Her heart thudded in her chest, a frantic alarm urging her to escape, yet her feet remained glued to the ground. Where had the flame gone? The darkness was absolute, wrapping around her like a smothering blanket. "Is anyone here?" she whispered, her voice trembling. The silence that answered was deafening. Then a whisper, soft as breath. "Rachel, come to me." It was that voice again, a slithering melody that both enticed and terrified her. Against her better judgment, she took a cautious step forward. The floor was uneven, the stone cool against her bare feet. Each movement felt weighted, as though the ground wanted to pull her down, to trap her among the shadows. "Show yourself," she shouted, but only her echo answered back. Faintly, she saw a flicker there, in the corner of her eye. A shape shifting, slinking from shadow to shadow like a predator. For a moment, she debated whether to run or confront whatever evil lingered. Curiosity gnawed at her. She had come this far. "Find me." It was close now, the voice a caress and a whip all at once. Her hands felt cold and clammy, but she pressed on, seeking that flickering shape. The altar loomed ahead again, a monument of despair. The dagger sat quietly, a sacrificial promise waiting to be fulfilled. Rachel's heart raced as the whispers rose again, rising into a chaotic symphony of longing and pain. She tried to drown them out, but they seeped into her thoughts, burrowing themselves in her subconscious. "Rachel, your husband," he waiting. Her stomach knotted. Was that true? Was he here? Perhaps he was bound to this wretched altar, just like those tortured souls she glimpsed before. She had to know. As she wrung her hands together, the darkness around her thickened, pressing close. A tangible malice filled the air, its breath cold and fetid against her skin. "Stop," she said to the darkness, her voice firm, though fear clawed at her insides. But the shadows swirled with a life of their own, crawling up her legs, seeping into her mind like an invasive fog. She gasped, feeling its icy grip tightening around her throat, suffocating her will. "Join us," Rachel, the voices sang now, an ominous lullaby. No. She fought against the pull, her fingers curling into fists as she struggled to push them away. Suddenly, the candle flickered back to life. The flame roared back with sudden intensity, illuminating the forms around her, the faces of the damned, but they looked different now, twisting in grotesque delight. Their joy was her horror. They were alive in their suffering, and now they all turned to her. "Help us! Save us!" they screamed in unison. "What do you want?" Rachel cried, her voice breaking. The gaunt figure from before appeared once more, its hollow eyes glowing fiercely in the light. "Do you want to know the truth? The secret of this place?" Grappling with dread, she felt the air shift. The cries of the altar surged, drowning out the figure's words. "Yes, tell me," she shouted, her heart pounding in rhythm with the altar's pulse. Its grin widened, revealing more decay. "To save him, you must take what belongs to us." The shadows closed in tightly, ready to consume her once more, but Rachel felt a sudden clarity. She had to choose, the altar or the truth. With surge of adrenaline, Rachel lunged toward the dagger as if it held the promise of salvation or the key to her doom. The instant her fingers grazed the hilt, the whispers crescendoed into piercing shrieks, oscillating between anguish and ecstasy. The pressure around her surged like a storm. Then everything went black again, a silence echoing her racing heart. Was her next move a death sentence? Or was she finally about to uncover the terrible truth of this place? Just as she began to process her thoughts, a voice whispered sharply against her ear, "You are tethered, now you must decide." What had she just unleashed? Rachel's fate swung precariously. With each heartbeat, the shadows intertwined with her. Was she the savior? Or had she just become the next curse? The dagger's hilt felt oddly warm against Rachel's skin, a stark contrast to the chill that crept through the air. She held her breath, her racing heart pulsing against the heavy silence, waiting. What had she just touched? The echoes of anguished cries pulsated around her, incoherent yet insistent, rising and falling like a wave crashing desperately against the shore. Suddenly, the shadows intensified, swirling together like a storm brewing on the horizon. The gaunt figure loomed closer, its hollow eyes piercing through the dim light. "You have chosen, Rachel," it hissed. "But how far are you willing to go?" Before she could respond, a sharp pain shot through her hand. She looked down, and blood trickled from her palm. The dagger twisted in her grip, glowing ominously, as if awakening from a long slumber. A new voice joined the cacophony, rising above the din, a soft, familiar plea. "Rachel, help me." It was her husband, Jonathan. The world around her blurred as she stared into the shadows, desperately seeking a glimpse of him. "Jonathan," she cried, her voice breaking with desperation, but the shadows thickened, swallowing his name whole. "To save him, you must act," the gaunt figure said, its voice now a whisper that wrapped around her like chains. "Release what binds you, or you will remain here like the others." Confusion washed over her. Release what? She hadn't even known she was bound. "What do you mean?" she stammered, panic knitting her brow. The figure stepped closer, its features sharpening grotesquely in the flickering light. "Everything has a price, Rachel. What will you sacrifice? A piece of your soul? A memory?" The weight of the altar pressed down on her, urging her to release yet another cry. "I don't want to. I just want him back." "Your love is strong, but strength has limits," it taunted, its hollow grin widening. "And love alone cannot save him." Rachel felt the pull of darkness growing thicker, reminding her of the countless souls who had cried for help only to have their pleas fade into despair. She thought of Jonathan's laugh, the way he held her hand, the dreams they had built together. Could she really sacrifice something to save him? The candle sputtered, casting fleeting shadows that flickered like memories in her mind. She could see snapshots of her life with Jonathan, a coffee shop, laughter, soft whispers in the dark, tenderness, love. But in that flickering light, she could also feel the depths of the darkness around her, foreboding, heavy, cold. It was alive, hungry. "Make your choice," the figure hissed, an unsettling urgency in its tone. "Or lose him forever." Rachel's resolve faltered. Fear clawed at her throat. The whispers grew louder, demanding to be heard, drowning out her thoughts. "Do it, Rachel. Just give in, and you shall be saved." "Silence," she screamed, but the shadows only buzzed and laughed, taunting her with the faces of the damned. trapped in this purgatory of torment and despair. She tightened her grip around the dagger, feeling its heat seep into her fingers like fire. Was this one sacrifice worth chasing after her love? Could she bear the burden of delivering more pain to escape her own? Rachel, a faint echo touched her consciousness, Jonathan's voice still lingering in the chaos. Don't let go. She looked again into the shadows, her breath catching. Would she betray every piece of herself in order to reach across this abyss? The shadows pulsed in rhythm with her heartbeat, thrumming with dark energy, as if they knew her deepest fears, and then it hit her a chilling realization. You, she whispered, looking back at the gaunt figure. You're not here to help me, you want me to suffer too. Before she could think further, the shadows surged toward her, enveloping her in chilling tendrils. The dagger pulsed in her grip, its warmth morphing into an insatiable heat that scorched her skin. Choose now, Rachel. Time is running out. The dread crescendoed, threatening to shred her sanity. Her grip on the dagger faltered as visions of Jonathan fizzled, flashing across her heart like a dying ember. Jonathan, she screamed, but the words fell into the abyss. What would she let go of? What would she endure to rescue him? The shadows tightened around her, a fierce grip demanding action. Just as she stood on the precipice of her decision, the ground trembled beneath her. It felt as if the altar itself was alive, shifting and breathing. And then, in the depths of that despair, a horrid truth echoed back. You cannot save him unless you first save yourself. The promise of terror loomed as Rachel faced her darkest fears head-on, with the horror of the situation closing in. Each second felt like a lifetime, the grip of despair strangling the air from her lungs. Would she finally break free from the curse, or would she be crushed beneath its weight, spiraling into the same void as the souls that cried out? What truth awaited her in the depths of darkness? The walls of the ancient church pulsated with her dread, as if the very stones were breathing in sync with her racing heart. Rachel felt an electric charge in the air, a twisted energy that made her skin crawl. The shadows lunged at her, slithering like serpents, eager to claim her as their own. She could sense them, waiting hungrily for her consent, whispering dark promises in her ears. Choose. Choose now. The gaunt figure hovered just beyond her line of sight, its presence unsettling and oppressive. Rachel's breaths quickened, each one laced with panic, and her grip on the dagger tightened. Could a choice really rip her away from this torment? Or would it tether her closer to the darkness, forever shackled in misery? With each heartbeat, Jonathan's anguished voice surged in her mind. Rachel, help me. Her resolve wavered, flickering like the weak candle flames scattered around the altar. Doubt wormed its way into her thoughts, and she shivered at the memory of their last night together. Laughter shared over wine, his reassuring smile as he wrapped her in his embrace. Could she trade that warmth for something unknown? The shadows whispered again, this time louder, more insistent. Balance the scales, Rachel. What is a memory worth? Shut up, she snapped, shaking her head as if that would drive them away. But they only laughed, a dissonant symphony echoing through the room. In a moment of despair, she turned to face the gaunt figure, desperation pooling in her chest. You're trying to trick me. This isn't saving him. It's a curse. As if responding to her accusation, the air shifted, growing cooler, the shadows tightening. Perhaps your fear is what makes you easy to manipulate, it said, the voice seeping into her mind with an unsettling calm. They have tried before, Rachel. Failed before. Why do you think they still linger? Images flashed across her vision, the tortured faces of those unable to escape, their mouths silent but eyes screaming in despair. She stumbled back. This is a trap. I want to fall for it. Yet, in her heart, Rachel grappled with doubt. Was it a trap? Were they lying? She could already feel her soul drawn deeper into the darkness, where Jonathan's face faded, replaced by the hollow eyes of countless lost souls. With a new clarity, determination ignited within her. No, she breathed. I want to let you take me. The shadows seethed, enraged by her defiance. They whipped around her like angry wind, tangling in her hair and raking across her skin, searing her with cold fire. Rachel cried out, the dagger blistering in her grip. Your choice, Rachel, the gaunt figure hissed, a malicious edge sharpening its words. What will you let go of? Rachel felt panic rise again. A piece of her, a memory? The laughter, The love were those the true burdens? Chains holding her back from saving Jonathan? You have nothing without sacrifice. The altar shook violently, splintering beneath her feet, and Rachel stumbled, desperate to remain upright. She was trapped in the crosshairs of fear and hope, standing perched on the edge of the abyss. Jonathan's voice faded to a whisper. A thought pierced the chaos. If she had to let go, why not start with something she clung to most, the illusion of certainty? If fear was what tethered her, could she sever that bond? Then I choose. As the ground churned beneath her, a sinister laughter echoed in her mind. It was a bleak promise that made her heart race. To embrace the unknown. In that moment, the dagger erupted with a blinding light, illuminating the room with a fierce intensity, forcing the shadows to recoil. Was this the way to save Jonathan, or simply a descent into madness? Everything faded to white. The laughter grew distant, swallowed by a new kind of silence. But as her vision dimmed, a single thought lingered, chilling and persistent. One sacrifice wasn't enough. What else, what worse would she have to endure? In that moment, Rachel realized the real nightmare was far from over. A sudden rush of air slammed against Rachel, knocking her backward. The once familiar church dissolved into a flurry of swirling shapes, light and darkness merging in an unsettling dance. It felt like a nightmare twisting reality. As the blinding brightness receded, Rachel found herself in an entirely different realm. She stood in a desolate graveyard cloaked in fog, headstones jutting out like specters from a forgotten era. Each marker seemed to bear witness to a cruel history, their inscriptions worn and indecipherable. An oppressive silence smothered her, broken only by the distant whispering of mournful voices. Help us, they cried, a haunting echo that wrapped around her like icy fingers. She gripped the dagger tightly, its presence both comforting and alarming. With each step she took, Rachel felt an invisible weight pressing down on her, as if the air itself was thick with sorrow. Goosebumps crept across her arms. She could sense them, lost souls wandering, trapped by their regrets and unfinished business. Their cold despair settled over her like a shroud. Jonathan, she called out, her voice trembling. Where are you? Silence answered. The fog thickened, obscuring the path ahead. A phantom chill swept through, and she shivered, glancing over her shoulder, the shadows flickering just out of sight. The dagger pulsed, its light shallow and flickering, like a dying star. You chose the unknown, a voice whispered, devoid of warmth. But what have you sacrificed? Rachel's heart raced. I don't know, she cried. Panic clawed at her throat. She felt an unseen force pulling her toward a crumbling mausoleum. Compelled, she ventured forward, the dagger leading her way. As she stepped inside, the air shifted abruptly. The darkness thickened, swallowing her whole. An altar lay at the center, brilliant and polished. But it was stained, shadows pooling at its edges. The walls echoed with muffled cries, a cacophony of anguish that clawed at her sanity. Is this where they were bound? She whispered, circling the altar. A sudden chill enveloped her, and she could see them now. Eyeless faces pressed against the unseen barrier surrounding her, mouths twisted in silent screams. Rachel recoiled, a flood of horror flooding her senses. Did you come to save him? A voice hissed from below, earthy and grating. The ground trembled, and she stumbled back, falling to her knees. Or would you too become one of us? A shudder ran through her as she tried to rise. I refuse to let this happen. The dagger pulsed with dark energy, urging her to choose again, to release her grip on reality. Trembling in fear, Rachel's breaths came quick, each one feeling heavier than the last. Jonathan, she cried out again, desperation clawing at her voice. Please, show me. The cold laughter returned, echoing off the damp walls, filling her with dread. He cannot hear you, you foolish girl. There are deeper sacrifices required, deeper than you can fathom. The shadows thickened, and Rachel saw Jonathan's face flash before her, pained, trapped beneath layers of grief. A scream filled the air as she grasped the dagger tighter, her mind racing. But what could she give? The ground beneath her quaked violently, pushing her to the edge of the altar. She could feel the pull of all the souls around her, their despair wrapping around her like claws. She gasped, recognizing what she needed to face. Maybe I have to face my own darkness. As those words fell from her lips, An overwhelming force surged through her. The world blurred, and the shadows began to writhe, their forms twisting into chaos. Rachel's heart thudded in her chest as she realized the deeper darkness had yet to reveal itself. The true horror lay not just outside in the realm, but within her own soul. A piercing scream ripped through the haze. Rachel, no? It was Jonathan's voice. And with it came an unbearable choice. Would she trade the last remnants of herself to free him? Or would she remain forever entangled in despair? The shadows lunged, and the dagger ignited with a blinding light. In that moment, as she felt the true weight of sacrifice begin to settle on her shoulders, she knew the real nightmare was only just beginning. The dagger's illumination pushed back the shadows, creating fleeting silhouettes that danced against the mausoleum walls. Rachel felt a surge of adrenaline as the pull of darkness met her desperation. Jonathan's voice echoed in her mind, mingling with the cries of the lost souls surrounding her. Their haunting pleas turned frantic, as if her hesitation was prolonging their torment. Rachel. His voice cut through her thoughts, sharper than the dagger in her hand. You have to act. She closed her eyes, drawing a deep breath, feeling the weight of fear and loss settle over her. Could she really face her own darkness? The shadows twisted closer, their forms tightening around her limbs like vicious vines, each wanting a piece of her. Let them go, she shouted into the suffocating darkness. I will fight for him. The dagger flared brighter at her declaration. The air shifted, and the room pulsed with energy, mirroring the conflict within her. An unsettling laughter erupted, the wall of despair pushing back, thickening like smoke. A shadow detached itself from the mass. It took on an eerie human shape, a ghastly visage that bore the features of someone familiar, yet grotesque. Who are you? Rachel gasped, struggling against the unseen grasp. You know me, it hissed, the voice cruelly mocking. I am the reflection of your scorn, the regrets you bury deep. Flashes of her past surged within her, moments of failure and pain, all the people she let down. Each regret crawled to the surface, and with them came faces familiar, yet distant. Her heart ached. Guilt swelled like a tide, threatening to drown her in memories. Stop it, she cried, but the shadow only drew closer, a grotesque smile twisting its features. You see, there is more darkness within you than there ever was without. You cannot save him. He is lost. Rachel's resolve began to waver. The flood of her buried mistakes mingled with Jonathan's face, desperate and pleading. The dagger trembled in her grip, a beacon of hope and despair all at once. No, she screamed, her voice cracking. I can't let you win. With a sudden surge of anger, she plunged the dagger into the altar, feeling the vibration ripple through the ground beneath her. The altar erupted with a blinding light, pushing back the darkness. The anguished screams of the souls intensified, ricocheting off the stone. Foolish girl. The shadow shrieked as it began to dissolve around the edges, losing its grip on reality. You'll regret this. You think you can face the darkness? The light consumed everything, the mausoleum disintegrating around her like a house of cards. Each crumbling rock felt like a piece of her past shattering, memories spiraling into the void. Jonathan, she cried desperately, feeling the world collapsing. But then the voice returned, faint but clear through the chaos. Rachel, you have to harness it. Embrace the darkness to save me. The weight of his words sank deep, and with them, an instinct rippled within her. Maybe accepting her flaws could be the key. Tightening her grip, she hunched over the dagger, heart racing with renewed determination. The shadows clawed at her, pulling her down, trying to drown her in the darkness she feared. Given, they taunted, their whispers laced with venom. But within the chaos, a flicker of bravery ignited. I'll never give up, she shouted, matching their ferocity. Whatever it takes, Jonathan, I'll find you. But as she prepared to face her fears, an unsettling truth loomed above her like heavy clouds. What if embracing that darkness meant losing herself entirely? How deep was she willing to delve? Just as she steadied herself, the ground shifted once more, and the temple of shadows cracked open like an egg, revealing a gaping abyss. The churning darkness below threatened to pull her in. One final roiling scream filled the air, and then all fell silent. Where would Rachel go next? into the frightening depths of sorrow or away from this dreadful place. Before she could choose, a deep voice echoed, "Your choice is just beginning." And with that chilling statement, the world plunged into darkness once again. The darkness enveloped Rachel like a shroud, dense and suffocating. She felt weightlessness as if the very ground had vanished beneath her. The whispering shadows swirled around her, tickling her skin with icy breath. Panic clawed at her throat as she was drawn closer to the yawning abyss. The light from the dagger flickered, weakened by the overwhelming void, illuminating just enough to see tendrils of darkness reaching up, darkness that seemed to want more than just to consume her. "Rachel!" Jonathan's voice echoed from the depths, strained and desperate. "Fight it. You know who you are." With every ounce of will, she fought to stay grounded. As she gasped, trying to remember the strength she had felt moments before, the shadows huddled closer, pulsing like a living entity. "I'm not afraid of you." She gripped the dagger tighter, willing it to burn brighter, but doubt seeped in, whispering lies that twisted through her resolve. "What do you really want?" It seemed to hiss. "You were too late to save him, too weak to fight." "Stop!" she yelled above the chaos, but her voice was lost in the cacophony, her heart racing faster than the panic rising in her chest. She blinked against the darkness. The abyss pulsed, revealing fleeting images. It showed moments she wished to forget, excruciating failures, arguments that spiraled out of control, and every lost opportunity. Each specter brought forth a pang of guilt, threatening to drag her down. "Jonathan!" she cried, desperately searching for his face in the swirl of shadows, but he was nowhere to be found. The faces of those past failures twisted into her memories, each one accusing her, each one reminding her why she was here, why she failed. The dagger glowed faintly, but the shadows wrestled against its glow, pushing it closer to dimness. "You will never win." The terrifying voice of the shadow caller laughed maniacally, sending a shudder through her bones. But somewhere inside, a spark ignited. She couldn't let them control her. "No!" she screamed, hurling her thoughts back at them. "I am not my mistakes. I am not my regrets." With that proclamation, the dagger surged, flooding the darkness with golden light. For a brief moment, clarity pierced through the cacophony. The shadows hissed and recoiled as the light poured forth like a tsunami, illuminating not just the ground below, but the very essence of their torment. They were nothing but fears made manifest, shadows of doubt. The ground quaked beneath her feet. The light grew, morphing into arcs of energy that danced around her. She felt Jonathan's presence again, stronger now, anchoring her resolve. "Embrace it," he urged, his voice clear and firm. But the shadows screamed, their terror palpable as their forms withered against the light. "You don't know what you're tampering with. Embrace the darkness, or it will consume you." "Don't listen." Jonathan's voice surrounded her, pulling her back from the edge. Rachel took a deeper breath, her heart pounding against her ribcage. She opened her eyes wide, allowing herself to feel every flicker of fear, every dark memory she had buried. Instead of resisting, she let them wash over her like storm waves crashing against a cliff. "I accept my darkness," she shouted, her voice nearly drowned by tempestuous winds of shadows. "But I will not be a prisoner of it." Just then, a crack opened in the abyss below, shimmering with unsettling energy. From the depths, a hand reached out, black and marred, clawing closer to pull her in. "What will you choose?" The shadows whispered, their voices weaving through her thoughts. For an instant, the abyss felt inviting, a haven of release from the pain and heartbreak. But within the turmoil, a flicker of light crested up within her chest, urging her toward choice. She had to make her move. And as the shadows lunged, ready to reclaim her, Rachel struck with the dagger once more, plunging it into the glowing fissure as a blinding light erupted from the point of contact. What would happen next? Would the darkness finally loosen its grip, or would she lose her soul in the attempt? As the forces clashed, the cataclysm of light and shadow sent her spiraling deeper into the unknown. The light exploded, a shockwave that pushed back the shadows with unyielding force. Rachel felt it resonate through her entire being, lifting her like a feather in a storm. The dagger hummed in her hand, its energy merging with her own, fueling her with profound courage. "You are stronger than they want you to believe." Jonathan's voice thundered through the chaos, grounding her in the midst of turmoil. The abyss writhed, shadowy tendrils clawing desperately at the light, but it was no match for the fire ignited within her. "I am not your prisoner," Rachel roared, her voice strong and unwavering. Amplifying her resolve, she plunged the dagger deeper into the crack, letting her energy pour into it like a sacrifice. Her pain, her regret, her fear all melded into a brilliant stream of light. Searing rays erupted from the fissure, swallowing the shadows whole. They shrieked in agony, their tormented faces dissolving into wisps of smoke that faded into nothingness. "No, you can't," the gaunt figure screeched, its once powerful presence shrinking in the brilliance of Rachel's light. With each moment, she felt the oppressive weight of despair lift from her chest, melting into the surrounding air. "Embrace your essence, Rachel." Jonathan's voice echoed again, clearer and warmer now. The darkness flinched, retreating as if it was burned by her emerging strength. Each piece of despair she had held onto began unraveling, unwinding from her spirit like a frayed thread. Memories blurred, amalgamating into a tapestry of both light and shadow, a raw testament of who she was. The altar at the center of the mausoleum cracked and splintered, the shadows weaving into a tempest around it before erupting into a blinding flash. Rachel felt Jonathan's essence wrap around her, and she gasped for breath, choking on the genuine love that poured forth from his spirit. "You're here, with me," she cried, no longer lost among the echoes of the cursed souls. With a twist of the dagger, a final pulse of power surged through her, illuminating the cavern and pushing at the very fabric of darkness that had thrived on her suffering. Showing no mercy, the shadows dissipated into the light, evaporating like mist under the sun, and the mausoleum trembled as the shadows retreated, banished for good. As the echoes of despair faded, there stood Jonathan, whole and radiant. "You found your way back to me." His eyes sparkled with warmth, and Rachel staggered forward into his arms, the warmth of his embrace flooding her with peace. No more darkness, no more fears, only love remained. "I was so scared," Rachel whispered, wrapping herself tighter around him, the dagger forgotten in the chaos. "I thought I lost you forever." "You carried the light within you all along," he murmured, brushing her hair away from her face. "Your strength shattered the curse. We're free now." Breathless, Rachel stepped back to take him in, disbelief shimmering in the corners of her mind. The graveyard transformed around them, the heavy fog lifting to reveal a world bathed in golden sunlight. The landscape brightened, labored pain refracted into hope. "I'm home," she breathed in disbelief. "Indeed, you are," Jonathan smiled, taking her hand. Together, they walked out of the mausoleum hand in hand. As the air filled with laughter, the laughter of the freed souls echoing as soft whispers of joy. Rachel recognized the faces from her nightmares, now smiling and glowing with peace as they were released from their torment. "Thank you," Rachel whispered to the fading shadows. She understood their pain, but also how to rise above it. The sun hung low, draping everything in vibrant colors. Rachel turned to Jonathan, and with him beside her, she became resolute. The past could not hold her anymore. Together, they stepped into the light, ready for their lives to finally begin anew. "Let us rebuild, Rachel." Jonathan's voice was firm yet gentle. "One step at a time." With a nod, Rachel smiled, her heart unburdened at last. Hand in hand, they walked away from the haunted church, leaving behind the remnants of haunting shadows, holding the promise of a bright, unyielding future. As the sun dipped behind the horizon, Rachel felt a surge of hope. She turned back one last time, grateful for the shadows that had taught her the meaning of strength. And then, a new chapter awaited them both, untainted by the duress of the past, filled with possibilities and the warmth of renewed love. If you enjoyed this story and want to stay tuned for more exclusive content that dives deep into the mystery and thrill of the unknown, you need to subscribe immediately to the channel. This is the moment to show your unwavering support. Smash the like button now to let the algorithm know you're with us, and be sure to flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about Rachel's journey. What did you think of her bravery? Share your thoughts like they're precious gems, because they are. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion, trust me. Thank you later. Only true fans understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions, and we need you to be part of our amazing community.